Hello folks, Dick Fairburn here. In case you're wondering why I'm not down in my man cave with the dead animals behind me, we sprung a leak, plumbing leak inside the wall. That room is completely destroyed and will probably be a few months before it's put back. So I thought I'd move around central Illinois and show you that this really is some pretty country here. People ask me why I stay here with all the crazy politicians and crazy gun laws. Family obligations are one thing, but the other thing is if you get to central Illinois, it's actually mighty pretty country. You just got to put up with some idiots in charge time to time. Today I want to talk to you about a subject that police officers have heard quite a bit about over the last 25 years. And many non-police officers have certainly heard the teachings of Lieutenant Colonel Dave Grossman, a retired battalion commander from the 75th Rangers. It goes to some of the mindset training that I have in my very early videos where I go over my Building a Better Gunfighter book. What's going on in here is probably a lot more likely to keep you alive in a gunfight than what's going on here. So I'm going to ask you today, are you a sheepdog? Now, if you don't know what that means, but you're interested, stick around. Over the last 25 years or so, police officers in particular have been exposed to the research and the teachings of a guy named Dave Grossman. He was a lieutenant colonel, retired from the Army. He was in charge of one of the battalions of the 75th Ranger Regiment. He's a psychologist and taught at West Point. And his research into the aspect of killing, what it takes for soldiers to kill in combat, what it takes for police officers, what it takes for civilian concealed carry holders to kill their fellow human beings, and then hopefully to come out the other side undamaged, both physically and emotionally. And we know that there's a lot of emotional damage that comes with the taking of another human's life. His first book was called On Killing, where he researched a lot of military type incidents dating back to the interview of a lot of World War II veterans. It was nominated for a Pulitzer Prize. It's required reading in a lot of different places. He followed that up with a book called On Combat, which really gets more into the specific details about how we train through stress inoculation. We train soldiers, we train police officers, how to be prepared for that gunfight. Mental stuff. And he uses the analogy of a sheepdog. If you think about human population, about 98% of the people out there are really kind of like sheep. Some cops disparagingly call them sheeple. They're the vast majority of the population. Now they're harmless creatures. They're productive creatures. Sheep graze on grass. They turn that into wool to keep us warm in the wintertime. But they're prey animals. I mean, they can barely harm each other. They certainly can't protect themselves from any kind of danger. And that brings us to the next 1% of the population, wolves. Evil, really. Sociologists have told us for years and years that really about 1% of the human population is truly antisocial. Predators, not prey. And in fact, outlaw biker gangs, I'm not going to name the ones that do it, but the truly bad boys of the biker gangs, if they have proven themselves in that gang and they have done enough heinous acts, they are awarded a 1%er patch. It's a white diamond-shaped thing with the 1 and the percent sign. And they tie that back to that sociologist theory that 1% of the population is bad. And they are proud that they have reached the level where they're one of that 1% of the population. Now, some people think there is no evil in the world. I disagree completely. And if you spend a career as a police officer, even in a small community, outside the violent inner cities, you will learn that there is evil in the world. So 98% are sheep, 1% are wolves, predators. The other 1% is what we need to talk about. And that's what Colonel Grossman calls sheepdogs. Now, the sheepdogs exist to protect the sheep from the wolves. They put themselves in between harm and the innocent population. Now, the most obvious sheepdogs in our society are members of the military and police officers. Every day they put on their armor, they put on their uniform, they go forth to confront evil, to protect the harmless sheep from those terrible wolves. The problem is, and we're seeing it really come to the forefront in the last 4 or 5 years with the defund police movement and the anti-police movement. The sheep don't really like the sheepdogs because they remind them of the wolves. They carry weapons. They can get a little gruff and imposing sometimes. They sniff around at night. They bark at things that go bump in the dark. They pee on the bushes to mark their perimeter. You get the idea. So the wolves and the sheepdogs look a lot alike to the sheep until a real wolf shows up. Dave Grossman shows a couple of really interesting pictures. I believe these are from Iraq. And it shows an American soldier, uniform, armor, weapon, walking in a densely populated area. And his head is turned. Something to his right has occurred. And he immediately throws his focus over to that, and you see some small children around. An IED had gone off in the distance, so a large explosion, dust cloud, undoubtedly people screaming. The next photo tells the story. Others can become sheepdogs in an instant. In 1998, Springfield, Oregon. In a high school there, a young man, this is the year before Columbine attack, the big school attack we all remember. The student went in with a Ruger .22 semi-automatic rifle with an extended magazine. It was at least either 25 or maybe a 50-round magazine. He also had a 9mm Glock stuffed in his pants. He started shooting up the cafeteria. And one young man, Jacob Ryder, he jumped up and grabbed his girlfriend in a bear hug, put his back to the shooter. So he's protecting his girlfriend from the threat. He was shot in the back. A .22 bullet went through his chest into his girlfriend. Neither were fatally wounded. When the shooter ran dry in his Ruger rifle, Jacob saw the chance, so he tackled the shooter, slammed him down to the ground. Bad guy got his gun out, shot Jacob again in the torso with a 9mm. But he lived, and he held this kid down with some help until the police arrived. Jacob survived, married his girlfriend. They have some kids now. And might have proved that he was cut out to be a sheepdog all along, because he eventually joined the Marine Corps. In another incident, Professor Liviu Librescu, I'm probably not pronouncing that correctly, a Romanian Holocaust survivor, professor at Virginia Tech. In 2007, a young student there had shot someone at a dormitory, then went to a classroom building on campus and was the first to try a new trick. He took sections of chain with him in his backpack, and when he got into the building, he looped the chain through the panic bars of the doors. and effectively kept the police out. The police had already been called to campus for the other shooting. They very quickly reached the building where he was, but they were unable to get in because he had secured the doors. So was able to run free for a while. Professor Labrescu blocked the door to his classroom with his body. He took 4 bullets through the door, but he kept that door blocked until almost all of his students were able to escape out windows of the classroom. He gave his life. He gave his life to protect his sheep. That's what sheepdogs do. A more recent example, Elisha Dicken. Many of you will remember this name. Shopping with his girlfriend at a mall in Greenwood, Indiana, 2022. A gunman opened fire in the food court area with an AR-15. Now, Elisha was just a civilian carrying a concealed weapon. The bad guy had an AR-15. He had already killed 2 and wounded 3 more when Elisha began to engage the shooter. He fired 10 rounds from a distance of approximately 40 yards. He hit 8 for 10 under this extremely stressful condition at 40 yards with a handgun. Few of us could do any better. A lot of trainers now, when they'll put shooters into the Dicken drill and see how many times they can engage a silhouette target at 40 yards. So, while 90% of these shootings occur up close, you need that skill for distance as well. He became a sheepdog in an instant. Now, concealed carry citizens like Elisha have stopped active shooter events in the United States. It's not an everyday occurrence, but neither is it rare. And if you try to get some research and see how often this has happened in the last, let's say, 20 years, it's kind of difficult. The FBI published a couple of reports, and they mentioned, we have geese in Illinois, they mentioned how many citizens have engaged active shooters and stopped the killing. But when you check those statistics, you find out that the FBI fudged a little bit. Gee, imagine that. They attempted to downplay citizen rescuers as much as they could. Now, active and retired law enforcement officers have nationwide concealed carry rights under a federal statute known as LEOSA, the Law Enforcement Officer Safety Act. It was first signed by George W. Bush as president. It has been updated a couple of times, and even Obama has signed those upgrades and expansions of who fall into this category. Yet, very few of those active or retired police officers carry concealed weapons when they are off duty every day. I don't understand why. When I was my last position as a public safety director, police chief, I encourage my people to go armed. Now you gotta walk a fine line when you do that policy-wise, because you can't order them to do it. If you do, then they're technically on duty and you gotta pay them for that time. But I certainly encouraged it. Now, at the same time, I have met many, many people across the country who have a concealed carry license as civilians. Now, there are some states, of course, that have concealed carry or have constitutional carry. But I'm talking about the people who jumped through the hoops. They paid the money, they went to the training, they bought the gun, they fired the ammunition in the training, they did whatever they needed to do in their state to get a concealed carry license. And I ask them, do you carry every day? Well, no. In fact, some of them say they hardly ever carry. Well, then why did you jump through all the hoops? Well, I wanted to be able to carry if I thought I needed to. Well, how are you going to know when you need to carry? As a police officer, if I knew I was going to be in a shooting on a given day, well, I'd just call in sick. You just never know. And if you're able to get out of harm's way on your own, I guess that's okay. But it brings me around to this thought of a sheepdog. Citizens are not required to be sheepdogs, certainly. Some are. Some become sheepdogs in an instant, like the examples I've given you. But tell me, when do you think you're going to, do you carry when you go to a major urban area where you know there's a lot of crime there? Or, I'm sorry, but it doesn't make sense to me. And to carry every day, either as a citizen or an off-duty police officer or retired officer, that's a lifestyle change. You have to wear different clothing sometimes. You have to figure out how you're going to dress in the summertime when you're wearing shorts and sandals, as opposed to the wintertime when you have a coat that could easily conceal a full-size pistol. So there's a lot of things you have to process before you're going to make that choice. Now, of course, this is the summer of 2024, perhaps the most important election cycle any of us will ever face. The liberals tell us that, oh, we've done such a wonderful thing for the country the last few years. You're making more money, you got more jobs, crime is down, everyone's happy, kumbaya. Crime is not down under the Biden-Harris administration. In fact, it is dramatically up. Violent crime is almost off the scale in a lot of major cities across the country. Now, they can claim their numbers because, well, there's several factors that go into it. A lot of cities no longer send in their crime data to the Uniform Crime Report section of the FBI. So a lot of the crimes simply are not going reported into this database. The other problem is Soros-backed prosecutors. In a lot of communities, they will either not charge the criminals at all, or they will downgrade maybe murder to some lesser misdemeanor offense, so it doesn't appear as major violent crime. Which means those prosecutors are putting wolves, knowingly, willingly putting wolves back out into the population of sheep. They are putting evil back on the street, and that is not by accident. It is by design. The faster they can destroy the fabric of our society, the sooner they can build it back in their communist utopia vision. If you don't agree with that, then I guess you can go to another channel right now. But folks, that's what's going on. So, where do you stand? I'll ask that question again. Are you a sheepdog? Are you capable of becoming a sheepdog should you encounter a wolf? Can you confront the wolf effectively if you don't have a firearm? If you have chosen to leave it home that day? If they have a weapon, that's unlikely. Now, I'm not even going to get into the open carry argument. There are people out there screaming by this point that, well, what about open carry? Oh, God, that's my constitutional right. Yeah, maybe it is. And in a lot of jurisdictions, it is legal for you to go carrying open in public. While it might be a constitutional right, a lot of us think it is probably a bad idea most of the time. And it's not to say you don't have the right to do it. But think about this. When a wolf is going to attack a herd of sheep, they don't just come over the hill, charge in there and get what they can. They lurk about the edges for quite a while. They look this situation over. They're looking for the vulnerable lambs. They're looking for the easiest avenue of attack. They don't want to fight. And if there's a sheepdog, well, now they're going to be even more careful. They don't want to fight. I mean, if criminals wanted to fight, all they got to do is go to the police station and start shooting through the front door. They'll get a fight. And that happens. Several times a year, police stations are attacked. But not generally. So, effective wolves, whether they be two-legged or four-legged, they surveil their potential victims. And that's why, if you're carrying concealed, they're going to notice it. And so when you are carrying concealed, and when that wolf is sneaking downwind, coming up to snatch you from behind, if you're carrying openly, you're likely to be the first victim. They're going to disarm you which is important to their attack, and they're going to get another gun, which is always part of what they're looking for. So I don't see open carry as a great idea in urban environments. The element of surprise when you have a concealed weapon is powerful. And the element of surprise has won more battles in war than almost any other tactic. Now, I want to speak directly now to my brothers and sisters, police officers, sheriff's deputies, federal agents, whatever you may be in law enforcement. You have a level of firearms skill beyond that of most civilians because of all the training you've received. You have experience confronting wolves. That's what you did for a living. You overcame them. You took them into custody. You are far better prepared than the average concealed carry citizen to deal with evil attacking the sheep. If you were at that mall in Indiana, you saw that active shooter spraying the area. 2 dead, 3 more wounded. You're watching this unfold before your eyes, but you chose not to be armed that day while you were off duty, or as a retired officer while you were retired. You chose not to be armed. You chose not to be ready to use the skills and experience you have in case of some horrible emergency. And perhaps you stood there and watched those people die that day. But you could not confront a man with an AR-15 with bare hands. You're going to have to live with that for the rest of your life. Now, you may not even be in your own jurisdiction. You do not have any legal obligation to protect these people. But when you signed on to be a cop, I think you signed on to be a sheepdog. That's everywhere you go. That's the kind of person you are, or the kind of person, in my opinion, you should be. You left your gun at home. You left your gun in the car. And the wolf went about his business unrestrained when you could have stopped it. Now, I mentioned that not everyone is cut out to be a sheepdog. Many of the people who carry concealed and have concealed carry licenses are simply not mentally or physically equipped to protect a flock of sheep. They got that concealed carry license to protect themselves and probably to protect their family. But they're not really ready to protect society at large. And please don't misunderstand me. That's okay. You do not have to justify your willingness to only protect your immediate family. That's fine. I'm not suggesting that everyone who carries a gun should run to the sound of the guns if an incident occurs. Moving yourself and your family away from the sound of the guns is okay. And in fact, it is probably the very best choice you could make in most circumstances, especially if you have young children with you. Moving those lambs to safety must be your primary goal. But what I'm asking is, if you get your lambs to safety, you still hear the killing going on, could maybe you go back, put yourself in harm's way and stop the killing? And in doing so, might you save other people's lambs? Give it some thought. I trained young police officers in an academy for a number of years. And I taught them that if they are in that mall with their family off duty, that they had 2 techniques they could use, 2 choices. First, if you have your children and your family with you, your first responsibility is to get your family to safety. And I said, so train your family, just like you train them for fire drills at home. Train them that I'm going to give you one of 2 commands. And when you hear me say these words, and I say them very emphatically, you've got to stop, you've got to listen, and you've got to do what I tell you to do. If you're going to move your family to safety, then you tell your family, follow me. Simple, 2 words. If they hear you say that as a direct command, follow me, then they will link up, grab hands, Your spouse or your senior child is probably not going to link your hands. They're going to grab your belt, because you may need to have two hands on a pistol to take your family to safety in this environment. And then you move out in a safe direction and you tow your family behind you until they are safe. The second choice these officers can make is, if their spouse or their oldest child is able to do that follow me command and take the family to safety, and you're confident that they can handle that. In that case, you're going to give a different command. You're going to tell that senior member of your family, call 911. When they hear that order, then they link hands, they take the family to safety, and when they get them to safety, they call 911. And they give dispatch a description of you. My father is a retired police officer. He's wearing a black shirt and tan pants. He has a yellow hat. He is going to the sound of the guns. He's going to try to stop the killing. When the cops get that call of that mall shooting, they're going to come in like thunder. Drive those cars 90 miles an hour with their hair on fire. They're going to have tunnel vision when they get into the scene. If they have a description of you, that might save your life. It might not. Innocents have been shot when cops run into situations like that. If the cops are coming and you are there, then you need to get your gun out of sight if you can. Back in the holster, on the ground, hands in the air. I'm a retired cop. Especially if you have put the person down. Don't stand there and hold them at gunpoint when the police come in, because they're looking for somebody with a gun and they just found him. So you get that pistol on the ground, hands in the air, and comply with whatever they tell you to do. And this goes the same for active cops, retired cops, citizens. If the police order you to the ground, go to the ground. If they're going to handcuff you, get handcuffed. If they're going to take you to jail temporarily, then go. Don't fight them. Go along with their instructions and things will go much better. We'll sort this out as things go on. Follow me if I'm taking my family to safety. Call 911 once I get there, or if my senior family member can take care of that task and free me up to try to go stop the killing. I'm not trying to tell you how to live. Choosing to go armed every day, as I said, requires a serious commitment and a lifestyle change. I'm just asking you to consider how much of society you are willing to protect when you go armed. And if your decision is that you're going to protect yourself and your family, and you don't think you can do more than that, that's fine. You don't have to explain that to anyone. That is perfectly acceptable. But if you're willing to branch out to your neighbors, your community, or maybe in the case of a shooting that you encounter in life, people you've never even met before. If you're willing to go get into that kill zone yourself, put your own life at risk to try to save innocent people, and God bless you. Our nation is spiraling downward at a dizzying pace. There are some major cities in this country that at night they almost look like a Mad Max movie. Chicago is averaging, I've heard, from 30 to 40 armed carjackings a night. Crime is not down. Depending on who becomes our next president, we may salvage this country, or we may see it fall into total anarchy. And for all the platitudes that Giggle Girl is telling you up on the stand, she is a Marxist. She wants to destroy our society and build it back in her utopian image, which you and I are not going to like very much. So are you a sheepdog? Are you willing to become a sheepdog? I don't care what decision you make. You are entitled to make any decision you like. But what I'm suggesting is you need to make that decision now. Not when you're under a huge load of stress, when you hear shots being fired, people screaming down the hallway. Think through now what you're willing to do. Get your mindset right. now. And if it ever happens, then you will have pre-made the decision. You will go into it with a lower level of stress no matter what you decide to do. And I hope you keep you and your family safe. Ladies and gentlemen, it is an honor to see what's going on with my channel. It's growing with subscribers. And it's an honor to have you watch my videos and make comments. So I asked, subscribe if you're interested. Resubscribe if you have to. We know that YouTube tends to kick people off without their asking. If you like what I'm doing, give me a thumbs up. If you don't like, tell me in the comments. I don't have all the answers, but I've seen a lot of problems in the world, and I have been associated with a lot of really smart people and learned to try to think through stress problems first before they come to you. I hope this video's done you some good. If it has, then thank you. Be safe.
Okay, we got them both here now. You ready? Bud got one. Ginger got one. Oh, she missed it. She usually gets them, doesn't she, Bud? Okay, girl, last one. You ready? You ready? Yeah! That's all there is till next time.